All right, Yankees fans, you know the Yankees pitchers and catchers report to Tampa for spring training on February 11th. So here's a little season preview for you guys with our New York Post Yankees beat writer Greg Joyce to get everybody all caught up with all things hashtag RepBX going into the new season. Oh, Greg, it seems like I was just talking to you yesterday about they were in the World Series. And now spring training is right around the corner again. How you feeling, man?
Yeah, it goes quick, but it's about that time again. Anytime you're getting ready for the Super Bowl, you're getting ready for pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training too. So for the Yankees, that's next Tuesday, and first workout for pitchers and catchers on Wednesday. So gonna start quickly here.
We already know who's gone, who's here. So I guess we'll start this thing off with the season preview with the question is, what is the biggest question mark surrounding the Yankees as a whole heading into this year's spring training?
Yeah, I think it probably just revolves around, did they really actually get better despite losing Juan Soto? We heard from Hal Steinbrenner a few weeks ago on the Yes Network saying that he feels like the Yankees are a better team overall despite not bringing back Soto. It's tough to do that, but they did kind of, they were able to rebound and, kind of move on with their offseason despite not being able to bring back Juan Soto, who obviously went across town to the Mets for 765 million. They didn't use all that money, but they, used some of that to kind of maybe in their eyes get a little bit more well-rounded than they were last year. Tried to shore up some defensive deficiencies that they had throughout last year that hurt them, especially in the World Series. So for an offseason in which they lost Juan Soto, they seem to, kind of pick back up, get back on their feet, and obviously land Max Fried, Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt, Devin Williams. So, the handful of guys that they did bring in are, pretty, talented, decorated guys that have done a lot in their careers. And, the Yankees are hoping that they, despite losing one of the best players in the game, are able to kind of get back and with maybe a more well-rounded roster overall than they had last year and take another charge at winning the American League. And, at this point, it seems like the Dodgers are going to end up being back in the World Series with the offseason they've had. But so maybe taking another shot at them, but obviously a long way to go before then.
Yeah, Yankees fans are hoping that the quantity of players that they brought in can match the production of the quality of the player that they lost that headed over to Queens. Since this is a Yankees interview, I won't say his name, Greg. I'm rocking with the Yankees on this one for this interview. What position or positions do you feel got the biggest upgrade?
Yeah, I would say their pitching staff. I think the rotation and the bullpen have gotten, on paper look pretty strong. The bullpen was pretty solid last year. By the end of the year, they used a lot of different guys, but now you bring in a Devin Williams, who's, a pretty shut down guy in the closer role. And they bring back Luke Weaver, who took over the closer role late. And now they can use him as a setup eighth inning guy, probably get some ninth inning save opportunities along the way, but just kind of as a guy that can, go attack the best parts of opposing lineups. They were able to re-sign Tim Hill yesterday, which was important to get a lefty back in the bullpen. They re-signed Jonathan Loáisiga, who comes with injury question marks, but when he's healthy, he's been one of their best back end relievers over the last few years. And they got Fernando Cruz in a trade from for Jose Trevino. So just a number of guys that they have back there. Lost Clay Holmes and Tommy Kahnle to free agency, but they've really fortified the back end of that bullpen and have a number of high leverage options. And then just the rotation, I feel like we've said this a couple times over the last few years, and maybe it has meant something, maybe it hasn't. But on paper, it looks like it could be a pretty formidable group if they all stay healthy. Obviously, that's the key. But they were able to bring in Max Fried, basically essentially replacing Nestor Cortez, who they used to land Devin Williams 1 year away from free agency. So signed Max Fried to an 8-year contract. Obviously, a lot of expectations going to come with that. But he's a guy who's proved he can do it in Atlanta, is at top of the rotation. So now he'll slot in behind Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon, the reigning AL Rookie of the Year, Luis Gil, and Clark Schmidt behind them. So, as you look at it, should be a pretty strong rotation. You obviously got to get through the whole grind of a season healthy. Not before you get to the season, you got to get through spring training healthy, which the Yankees rotation didn't last year when Cole got injured. But, heading into camp, at least that looks like a real area of strength.
On the flip side, what position do you think is the weakest going into spring training?
Yeah, I think it's third base. It's really the only position up for grabs right now. With Jazz Chisholm likely moving over to second base to fill in for Gleyber Torres, who left in free agency. But as it stands, obviously they can still add players before camp once camp starts. But right now, it looks like that third base job is going to be a battle between Oswaldo Cabrera, DJ LeMahieu, and Oswald Peraza. A number of guys that Cabrera they prefer in a utility role. He's kind of best in that role. DJ LeMahieu's done it before in his career, but the last few years he's just been the shell of himself offensively because a number of injuries to his legs. His last spring training, first few weeks, all they kept on, all we heard from the Yankees was about how explosive LeMahieu looked coming back from injury, and then he fouls the ball off his foot. I think it was mid-March, and set him back. He was couple months, never the same when he came back, and so now he's still got 2 years and $30 million left on his contract. So he's going to take another shot at seeing if he can stay healthy and get back to the kind of hitter he was earlier in his career. And then Oswald Peraza he's a guy that's when he came up as a prospect came with a lot of hype and talent, but hasn't been able to hit in his in some limited big league opportunities. He's out of minor league options too, so it's an interesting camp for him just because it's kind of his last shot to try to stick to make the team and see if he can. Obviously he's a natural shortstop, but he's bounced around a little bit ever since he lost that job to Anthony Volpe 2 years ago. So he's going to take a swing at third base too. Obviously they can still acquire guys once they get to camp. The last few years they made a number of deals either in the middle of camp, at the end of camp, right before opening day. So the roster is never fully set in stone, but as they enter camp, third base is really the big area of concern that they haven't solidified just yet.
You've mentioned a lot of guys who are going to be rocking pinstripes this year. Who's the best free agent signing on paper, would you say?
Yeah, it's strange. They only made 4 major league free agent signings this offseason. A lot of their work was done via the trade market. So I'll kind of cheat a little bit and say, best trade looks like it could be, either Cody Bellinger or Devin Williams. They took on Bellinger's money and all they had to give up was Cody Petit. And then to get Williams, they gave up Nestor Cortez and Caleb Durbin, who they were saying had an outside shot to win the second base job. But obviously he's a guy who is unproven at the major league level just yet. But so they bring in those two guys, a couple former All-Stars that, have the potential to make a real impact. Bellinger's a guy that can hit in the middle of the lineup from that left side. You can kind of dream about what that looks like at Yankee Stadium. A guy who's been a former MVP in his career. Bellinger's dad played for the Yankees, so there's a lot, kind of going there, working in his favor, you would think. And then Devin Williams, like we said, just being able to put him at the back of the bullpen. He's a guy that makes a lot of hitters look foolish out there. So if he's able to stay healthy, I think those two guys, could end up being the best acquisitions of the offseason.
All right, so who's the new guy that's going to give Brian Cashman his best return on investment, ROI? Like, who's the guy that they sign at a good value, but you think or feel like he's going to overproduce?
Yeah, I think he's not necessarily a new guy, but bringing back Tim Hill. He signed yesterday a 1-year, $2.85 million deal. That's a pretty good price point for the Yankees, at least. They cycled through a number of lefties early on last year. Victor Gonzalez and Caleb Ferguson that they'd gotten in trades, and neither one really worked out. And then they signed Hill, I think it was in June, after he was let go by the White Sox, who were the worst team in baseball. So, but the Yankees, have done this over the years, as kind of reclamation projects in the bullpen. They did it with Hill, who's a ground ball specialist, and he emerged as one of the their most important arms late in the season. So being able to get him back in the bullpen for this year, he's their only lefty right now. He could get some big outs late in games against opposing lefties. So, at $2.85 million with a club option for next year, that seems like a pretty good deal. Especially considering where the Yankees are right now, they're just a bit above the highest luxury tax threshold that they would like to get under if they can. But that seems like a pretty good number for a guy that they think is going to get a lot of big outs in that bullpen.
I know they're going into spring training and the final roster isn't set just yet, but who's the biggest name on this team right now that's most likely to be gone by the trade deadline?
Yeah, I mean, going in, it seems like Marcus Stroman is kind of the odd guy out in the rotation. He currently, would project as their number six starter if they're all if the top five guys stay healthy. And he's set to make $18 million, which is a high price for a guy that is kind of a depth arm at this point, or if you had to keep him on the roster, I guess a long man in the bullpen, which he kind of took over that role late last season, and they never really found a spot for him in the playoffs when he was on the roster. So it seems like they would like to move Stroman in his contract if they can. They have obviously haven't found a taker for him yet. There's a number of free agent starters still on the market, so kind of seems like they're gonna have to wait until a lot of those guys sign, and then maybe there's injuries elsewhere in camps around Florida or Arizona to rotation, and the team needs a guy that can kind of eat innings, pretty solid. Stroman's kind of proving he can be that guy. Not going to light up, the velocity or anything like that. His ERA is going to be somewhere around 4 plus. Like that's, and just throw maybe 140, 150 innings. It's kind of, what he's been, but that's a serviceable arm for a lot of teams around the league. But just right now, it seems like the odd guy out for the Yankees. And if they're able to at least pay down some of that salary, maybe they find a taker for him, whether it's in spring training or earlier in the season. We'll see when it happens. But he seems like kind of the odd guy out right now.
All right, last question, and it's the $360 million question. Will Aaron Judge have a better, the same, or worse season now that Juan Soto is gone?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have a better season than the one he had last year. Obviously, the second time winning the AL MVP. Uh, but the reality is that when he's been healthy the last few years, he's been able to put together that kind of season no matter who's batting around him. When he won it in 2022, he was didn't exactly have all that much help around him in the lineup, especially late in the year. He was batting lead off a lot, so and he was kind of just putting the team on his back. So he's shown that capability. Obviously, it didn't hurt at all having Soto hit in front of him last year. Most times he was coming up to the plate with a guy on base, so that was a luxury for him to have. But seems like Cody Bellinger could be a guy that hits behind Judge this year. Aaron Boone likes that left-right balance in the lineup, so maybe we see Judge going back to hitting second and Bellinger behind him, and really being able to try to get on base for those guys, and obviously doing damage with the long ball first and foremost. But yeah, I mean, it would be, like I said, better. It's tough to do that than what he did last year, but I would expect somewhere around the same if he's able to stay healthy, because he's kind of proven, at least in the regular season, he's been able to do that at a high level, regardless of who's batting in front or behind him.
All eyes are back on #AllRise. Greg Joyce, safe travels down in Tampa, man. Enjoy the weather.
Thanks, Brennan. Appreciate it.